nervous system. Nervous coordination. The body of an animal frequently exposed to a variety of stimuli in its daily life. For an appropriate response to a particular stimulus, usually more than one body parts are involved. Their activities are coordinated either by nervous system or endocrine system or both. These two types of coordination you also have studied in previous classes. Steps involved in nervous coordination. Nervous coordination mainly comprises highly specialized cells called the neurons. The function of neuron is to detect and receive stimuli from different sensory organ receptor and then integrate them to determine the mode of response of the living organism. And then commands for an appropriate response are transmitted to the other organ receptors, effectors. Nervous coordination is higher in higher animal and therefore consists of following steps: reception of stimuli, processing analysis of information, response to stimulus, reception of stimuli, reception of stimulus. Those parts of the body that receive stimuli from internal or external environment are called receptors or transductors. A receptor may be a complete organ or a cell or just neuron endings. Information collected by the receptor is transmitted to the central nervous system through sensory neurons. Classification of receptors. Receptors are classified into different types on the basis of stimuli. Photoreceptor detect light stimuli, for example, rods and cone cells in the retina of eye. Chemoreceptor detect ions or molecules chemical, for example, receptors found in nasal epithelium for detection of smell, olfaction, and those found in tongue for taste, gustation. Chemoreceptors are also found in hypothalamus called osmoreceptor that detect changes in osmotic pressure of blood. Mechanoreceptors changes in pressure, position, or acceleration include receptors for touch, stretch, or pressure, hearing, and equilibrium. Thermoreceptors detect temperatures, stimuli. They are mostly found in skin. Nose detect pain. Processing analysis of information. Sensory inputs from various receptors are received by central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. They act as coordinating center of the body. Thus collected information is further processed, analyzed for an appropriate response by special type of neurons called associative or intermediate neurons. Response of stimulus. Those parts of the body which produce an appropriate response are called effectors, muscles and glands. An effector organ on receiving signal from central nervous system by motor neuron provides an appropriate response either by producing movements, muscles, or secretion glands, neurons. Although more than 50% of neuron system consists of neuroglial neuroglia cells, but the neuron is considered as chief structural and functional unit of the nervous system. These specialized cells are information processing units of the nervous system responsible for receiving and transmitting information for receptors and effectors. A typical neuron consists of cell body soma and fibrous structures called dendrites and axons. Structure of neuron. Sensory neuron. These neurons carry impulses from receptor to the central nervous system. The dendrite endings of some sensory neurons also act as receptors. Unlike other neurons, these are monopolar. They have only one fiber originating from cell body, which immediately gives rise to branches. One branch peripheral running between the receptor site and dorsal root ganglion collecting of neuron cell in which cell body is located, and the other branch central running from ganglion into the spinal cord or brain. There is no clear difference between dendrite and axon because, except for its terminal portions, the entire fiber is structurally and functionally of axon type. Associative intermediate neurons. These neurons are found in brain and spinal cord, central nervous system. They are involved in processing and interpretation of information coming from receptors. Associative neurons are multipolar and, unlike other neurons, have highly branching network of dendrites, giving the cell a tree-like appearance. Motor neurons. These neurons carry impulses from central nervous system to effectors. Motor neurons are also multipolar but have long axons that run from the central nervous system to the effectors. Flow of information and nervous coordination can be explained with the help of reflex arc. Reflex arc. The pathway of nerve impulse during reflex action is called reflex arc. Reflex actions are spontaneous, involuntary activities performed unconsciously. For example, if you touch a hot or sharp pointed object by your hand, you will experience that your hand moves back at once. Before you think about it, reflex activities have no involvement of brain. Therefore, the pathway of nerve impulse is highly modified and quick than the general pathway. A reflex arc consists of all basic components of nervous coordination like receptor, sensory neuron, associative neurons, motor neuron, and effectors. In the above example of reflex action, when your hand touches the sharp pointed object, fan sensitive ending of sensory neurons present in skin are stimulated. Peripheral branch of sensory neuron transmit impulse to the dorsal root ganglion from where impulse is carried to spinal cord by central branch of sensory neuron. An associative neuron in the spinal cord is stimulated, which in turn stimulates the motor neurons. The axons of motor neuron carry impulse to the bicep muscles, effector causing them to contract and withdraw the body part from damaging stimulus. The sensory neuron also make a synapse or associative neuron not involved in the reflex that carry signals to brain and form act to the danger. Neuroimpulse. Neuroimpulse is information about stimulus that is transmitted from receptor to the central nervous system, from central nervous system to the effector. And technical terms, a neuroimpulse can be defined as a wave of electrochemical change that travels along length of neuron from one end to the other. A neuroimpulse conduction electrochemical means that it uses electricity made with chemical ions and molecules, sodium, calcium, and charge-bearing organic molecules. Neuron possesses electrical potential, which is sort of stored potential energy which is manifested during separation of charges across the barrier. In the case of neuron, the electrochemical potential is termed as membrane potential. For your information, the transmission of impulse along the neuron requires the movement of ions across the membrane. This is carried out by tiny holes called channels. These channels basically are of two different types. For example, pumps and gates. Pumps perform active transport while gates are responsible for facilitated diffusion. Some gates work only in specific conditions called voltage regulated gates, while other functions are the time are known as non-voltage regulated gates. Negative And positive ions act as charge separating barrier in neuron membrane. Membrane potential is exhibited in two different forms: resting membrane potential, active membrane potential. Resting membrane potential. It is characterized by a more positive outer surface of neuron membrane that than inner surface. The state is also referred as polarized state, and the neuron is supposed to be at rest. This means that there is an unequal distribution of ions on the two sides of the neurocell membrane. This potential generally measures about 70 millivolts, with the inside of membrane negative with respect to the outside. So the resting membrane potential is expressed as minus 70 MV, and the minus means that the inside is negative relative to or compared to the outside. It is called resting potential because it occurs when a membrane is not being stimulated or conducting impulses. Resting membrane potential is established by the following factors: distribution and active movement of sodium and potassium, negative organic ions. There are many types of organic compounds in neuron cytoplasm that also have negative charges. These ions include some amino acids, many proteins, RNA, DNA. Presence of these ions in neuron cytoplasm makes inside of neuron more negative than outside. Leakage of potassium ions. Cell membranes of neuron also has many channels, proteins called gates. Potassium ions are continuously moved out of the neuron through some non-voltage regulated gates. This also makes more positive outside of neuron than inside. Refractory ferrets. After an action potential, neurofiber undergoes a period of recovery in which it regains its original ionic distribution and polarity and prepares itself for the next stimulation. This period of recovery of neurofiber is called refractory ferret. Types of neuroimpulse. There are two types of neuroimpulse: continuous impulse, saltatory impulse, continuous impulse. In non-myelinated neurons fiber, the potassium and sodium ions can move across membrane all along the length of neuron, so action potential flows as a wave. This type of impulse is called continuous impulse. Saltatory impulse. In myelinated neuron fiber, the myelin sheath is impermeable to potassium and sodium ion, so prevents the ionic exchange and depolarization fiber along the whole length of neurons. The ionic exchange and depolarization occur only at nodes of Frenware, so the action potential is conducted from node to node in jumping manner. This kind of jumping impulse is called saltatory impulse. Speed of neuroimpulse. Speed of neuroimpulse is different in different neurons fiber and depends upon the morphology of neurofiber. Average speed of neuroimpulse is 100 to 120 meters per second. The speed of neuroimpulse is faster about 20 times in myelinated neuron fiber due to salutary conduction. Another reason the myelinated fibers conduct faster impulse is that myelin sheath acts as an insulating sheath and prevents loss of energy. So myelinated neuron fibers require less energy. Speed of neuroimpulse. Speed of neuroimpulse also depends upon diameter of neuron fibers. Thick neuron fiber conduct faster impulse than fibers because resistance to electrical current flow is inversely proportional to the cross sectional area of the conductor, such as wire or neuron fiber. So, with the increase in thickness of neuron fiber, there is decrease in resistance of fiber to neuroimpulse. Synapse. In most cases, action potential are not transmitted from one neuron to another to form neuron to other cell. From neuron to other cell, however, information is transmitted, and this transmission occurs at synapses. This is the junction between axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron, where information from one neuron is transmitted or relayed, handed over to another neuron, but there is no cytoplasmic connection between the two neurons. Instead, a microscopic gap is present. There are two types of synapses: electrical synapses, chemical synapses. Electrical synapses. In electrical impulses, which are specialized for rapid signal transmission, the cells are separated by a gap, synaptic cleft of only 0.2 nanometer, so that an action potential arriving at the free synaptic side of cleft can sufficiently depolarize the postsynaptic membrane to directly trigger its action potential. Chemical synapses. The majority of synapses are chemical synapses where synaptic cleft has gap of more than 20 nanometer. Though through these synapses, information of impulse from one neuron is transmitted to another by means of chemical messengers, the neurotransmitters. Transmission of neuroimpulse across synapse. The axon terminals of presynaptic neurons have expanded clefts called synaptic nubs. The cytoplasm of synaptic nub contains numerous tiny spherical sacs called synaptic vesicles. Neurotransmitters. These are chemical messengers of nervous system. These are more than 100 known neurotransmitters. However, nearly all of these fall into one of a few groups based on chemical structure. Major classes of neurotransmitter are acetylcholine, biogenic amino acid, neuropeptides, and gases. Some neurotransmitters that produce excitation on postsynaptic neuron receptor are called excitatory neurotransmitters. For example, acetylcholine, while other inhibits the postsynaptic action potential are called inhibitory neurotransmitters or serotonin. Organization of human nervous system. Human nervous system is a typical centralized nervous system. However, centralized nervous system has characteristics of most animals from platforms to chordates, but human nervous system is the most advanced among them. Divisions of nervous system. Human nervous system primarily provides into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system act as coordinating center while peripheral nervous system provide communication among receptors. Central nervous system and effectors. Further division of nervous system are given in the following table. Nervous system. Central nervous system receives and processes information and initiates action. Brain receives and processes sensory information, initiates response, stores memories, generates thoughts and emotions. Spinal cord conducts signal to and from brain, control the reflex activities. Peripheral nervous system. Motor neurons carry signals from the central nervous system that control activities of muscles and glands. Sensory neurons carry signal to the central nervous system from sensory organs. Motor neurons, somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements by the activation of skeletal muscles. Autonomic nervous system control involuntary response by influencing organs, glands, and smooth muscles. Synaptic division prepares the body for stressful or energetic activity, fight or flight. Parasympathetic division dominates during times of rest and rumination, directs maintenance activities. Central nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord, both act coordinating center, but brain is involved more in coordination than spinal cord. Spinal cord also act as link between peripheral nervous system and brain, protection of brain and spinal cord. The brain and spinal cord are highly sensitive part of human body, so their protection from mechanical stresses is very important. They are protected in three different ways. Skeleton. The parts of skeleton that protect the brain and spinal cord are cranium and vertebral column. Cranium is part of skull that covers the brain. Vertebral column consists of 33 vertebrae that encloses the spinal cord. These parts protect the brain and spinal cord from accidents and other physical traumas. Ventricle fluid filled skull, brain, meninges, fluid of brain, fluid between the meninges and spinal cord. Meninges. The meninges is the system of membrane which envelopes the central nervous system. The meninges consist of three layers: the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and pia mater. The primary function of the meninges is to protect the central nervous system by providing cushion-like matrix. Cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid is produced from blood vessels, a brain, and spinal cord by a combined process of diffusion, pinocytosis, and active transport. Cerebrospinal fluid is found in between pia mater and arachnoid mater, around the surface of brain and spinal cord and the ventricles of brain, and in the central hollow canal of spinal cord. It acts as a cushion that protects the brain and spinal cord from mechanical shocks. It also plays an important role in the homeostasis and metabolism of central nervous system. Structure and function of brain. The human brain is the most wonderful and mysterious creature of nature. It coordinates the action so that they happen in the right sequence and at the right time and place. It also stores information so that the behavior can be modified accordingly. According to the past experience, human brain is divided into three parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain is massively developed and contains the most sophisticated integrating centers. It has two subdivisions, telencephalon and diencephalon. The telencephalon consists of a pair of olfactory bulbs and cerebrum. The olfactory bulbs are concerned with the sense of smell. The cerebrum has many folds or convolutions that may be related to intelligence. The cerebrum is the largest portion of the brain. The midbrain functions. In the coordination and relay of visual and auditory information, it is used in human and contain reticular formation, which is a network of neurons running through medulla in the hindbrain, through the midbrain and up into the thalamus and hypothalamus of the forebrain. It receives input from most of the senses and sends outputs to higher brain centers, filtering the sensory information. Spinal cord is a central cable of nervous system. It is about 18 inches long and about half an inch in width. It is an elongated hollow and cylindrical structure lying and the neural canal, a vertebral column. It is continuous in front with the brain and tapers posteriorly lying in the canal of urostyle. It is made of a very large number of neurons. In cross section, the spinal cord shows an inner gray matter and outer white matter. The gray matter surrounds a central canal containing cerebrospinal fluid. The central canal of spinal cord is continuous in front with the cavities of the brain but ends bluntly behind. The gray matter consists of cell bodies and white matter is made of nerve fibers. Spinal cord is covered with a thin pigmented membrane. The pure matter and the neural canal is lined with a thick top membrane. The dura mater, the space between the two membranes is filled with a lymphatic fluid which protects the cord from shocks. Function of spinal cord. Spinal cord is concerned with many reflex sections involving body structure below the neck region, conducting sensory impulses from the skin and muscles to the brain, carrying motor impulses from the brain to muscles of the neck and limbs. Receiving commands from brain so it controls part of the body in the trunk. Peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system comprises sensory and motor neurons. These neurons are distributed throughout the body in the form of ganglia and neurons. Ganglia, the collection of neuron cell bodies are called ganglia, singular ganglion. They provide relay points and intermediary connection between different neurological structures in the body, such as peripheral and central nervous system. Ganglia often interconnect with other ganglia to form a complex system of ganglia known as a plexus. Nervous tracts. The bundles of neuron fiber, dendrite and axons covered by connective tissues are called neurons. All the communication between receptor to the nervous system and from central nervous system to the effector is carried out by neurons. Neurons can be classified on the basis of function and origin. With respect to the functions, neurons are three types. Sensory neurons. These neurons carry impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. Motor neurons. These neurons carry impulses from central nervous system to the effectors. Mixed neurons. These neurons are the groups of sensory and motor neurons. With respect to the origin, neurons are of two types. Spinal neurons. These neurons originate from and lead to the spinal cord. There are 31 pairs of spinal neurons, which are grouped as follows: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, coccygeal. Somatic nervous system. The somatic system is part of the peripheral nervous system responsible for carrying sensory and motor information between central nervous system and involuntary parts of the body. The somatic nervous system controls skeletal muscle as well as external sensory organs such as the skin. The system is said to be voluntary because the responses can be controlled consciously reflex reactions of skeletal muscle. However, are an exception. These are involuntary reactions to external stimuli. Autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system consists of sensory neurons and motor neurons that run between the central nervous system, especially the hypothalamus and medulla oblongata, and various internal organs such as heart, lungs, viscera, glands, both exocrine and endocrine. The contraction of both smooth muscle and cardiac muscle is controlled by motor neurons of the Autonomic nervous system. The action of the autonomic nervous system are largely involuntary in contrast to those of the sensory somatic system. The autonomic nervous system can further be divided into the parasympathetic and sympathetic divisions. Effects of drugs on nervous system. There are many drugs which are being used to treat nervous disorders, but abuse misuse of these drugs can produce ill effects on nervous coordination. One should be aware of uses and abuses of some common drugs used in our society. Heroin. Heroin is an illegal, highly addictive drug. Heroin is processed from morphine and naturally occurring substance extracted from the seed pod of certain varieties of poppy plants. Medical use. Under the chemical name morphine, the acetyl morphine, the heroin is prescribed as strong analgesic, analgesic where it is given via subcutaneous, intramuscular, or intravenous route. Its use includes treatment for acute pain, such as severe physical trauma, myocardial infarction, post-surgical pain, and chronic pain, including end-stage cancer and other terminal illness. Abuse misuse. Heroin is usually injected, sniffed, snorted, or smoked. With heroin, short-term effects include warm flushing of the skin, dry mouth, depressed respiration, and suppression of pain, nausea, vomiting, severe itching, and spontaneous abortion. Long-term effects of heroin use include addiction, infectious disease, for example, AIDS, hepatitis C and B, collapsed veins, bacterial infections, abscesses, infraction of heart, lining and valves, and arthritis. Cannabis. Cannabis. Cannabis sativa, also known as marijuana, refers to preparation of the cannabis plant which is being used as a psychoactive drugs. Hashish, commonly called church, is another form of cannabis which is concentrated resin produced from the flowers of the female cannabis plant. It can often be more potent than marijuana and can be smoked or chewed. Medical use. Cannabis has very beneficial effects as medicine. Among these are amelioration of nausea and vomiting, stimulation of hunger and chemotherapy in AIDS patients, lowered Intraocular eye pressure shown to be effective for treating glaucoma as well as general analgesic effects. Abuse misuse. The most common adverse effect due to the abuse of cannabis is anxiety, restlessness, feeling of loss, control, panic, fear, impending death, depression, suicidal thoughts, and psychosis, severe mental disorders in which contact with reality is lost or highly distorted. Nicotine. Nicotine is an alkaloid mainly found in tobacco leaves but also found in many other plants or family Solanaceae. Medical use. The primary therapeutic use of nicotine is in treating the patient habitual of smoking. It stimulates the release of many chemical messengers including acetylcholine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, serotonin, vasopressin, dopamine, and beta endorphin. So it acts as a neurostimulant. At higher doses, nicotine enhances the effect of serotonin and beta endorphin activity, producing a calming, pain-killing effect. Nicotine is unique as comparison to most drugs and acts both as neurostimulant and sedative painkiller. Misuses. Unfortunately, many people do not know that nicotine is also sold commercially in the form of pesticide. It is fact that nicotine is an extremely toxic poison. 60 milligrams of nicotine, about the amount in 3 or 4 cigarettes, if all of the nicotine were absorbed, will kill an adult. But consuming only one cigarette worth of nicotine is enough to make a child severely ill. Nicotine poisoning causes vomiting and nausea, headaches, difficult breathing, and stomach pains. In smokers, mother nicotine damages the placenta, increasing the likelihood of miscarriages, premature birth, and damage to the fetus. Alcohols. The alcohol is among the most harmful drugs, particularly in view of frequency of its use. It is absorbed quickly into blood from digestive tract after drinking. Medical uses of alcohol. It stimulates the body when taken in a small quantity as medicine to improve health conditions since it is an excellent solvent. So many drugs are delivered into the body by dissolving in it. Alcohol is also used as component of many medicines like cough syrups. Due to its antiseptic nature, it is also used to wash wounds during bandages and while administering injections. Misuse. When people take alcohol in large quantities for non-medical purposes, it will be called as abuse of the drugs. In small quantity, it can suppress the cellular activity in brain. In large doses, it can kill them. Alcohol reduces level of serotonin and dopamine and act as a depressant. Driving after only drinking a small amount of alcohol is dangerous because alcohol affects your reaction time and judgment of speed. This can result in an accident which may hurt you or other people. People who have drunk too much lose control of speech and movement. Extreme drunkenness can result in people becoming unconscious and even dying from choking and their own vomit or of alcohol poisoning. Alcohol addiction is also causes memory loss, damage, cirrhosis, or hardening of liver. Hallucination, where people imagine they are in a magical world and see enemies everywhere. This disease called paranoia. Depression and anxiety, which can result in suicide. Alcohol in gut also destroys certain vitamins and interferes with absorption of other, leading to severe vitamin deficiencies. Common inhalants like nail polish removers and glue. Inhalants are chemical vapors or gases that produce psychoactive, mind alerting effects when abused or misused by concentrating and intentionally inhaling these fumes. This includes volatile organic solvents, fuel gases, nitrites, and anesthetic gases, which are commonly found in glue, paint thinner, gasoline, and nail polish remover. Effects of misuse. Inhalants provide an instant rush and like alcohol cause euphoria, followed by central nervous system depression. Deep breathing may result in loss of self-control, violent behavior, nausea, vomiting, unconsciousness, giddiness, loss of appetite, and higher doses hallucination, loss of motor skills, slurred speech, and heart palpitations. Heart disorders and diagnostic tests. Diseases of nervous system are also called neurological disorders. They can be categorized according to the primary location affected, the primary type of dysfunction involved, or the primary type of cause. The broadest division is between central nervous system disorder and peripheral nervous system disorder. Neurological disorders are classified into the following categories: vascular, stroke, infection, meningitis, structural, brain tumor, functional, headache, degenerative, Alzheimer's disease, stroke. Brain cell function requires a constant delivery of oxygen and glucose from the bloodstream. A stroke or cerebrovascular accident occurs when blood supply to part of the brain is disrupted, causing brain cells to die. There are two kinds of stroke. The more common kind, called ischemic stroke, is caused by a blood clot that blocks or plugs a blood vessel in the brain. The other kind, called hemorrhagic stroke, is caused by a blood vessel that breaks and bleeds into the brain. Many strokes are transient. Ischemic attacks occur when the blood supply to the brain is briefly interrupted. Symptoms of stroke: numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body. Confusion, trouble speaking or understanding speech. Trouble seeing in one or both eyes. Trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination. Severe headache with no known cause. Treatment. A stroke is medical emergency. Immediate treatment can save lives and reduce disability. So it is very important for people who are having stroke symptoms to get to hospital as quickly as possible within 3 hours after symptoms begin. Treatment depends on the severity and cause of the stroke. In the hospital, a CT scan or MRI scan may be done to see whether the stroke is from a clot or from bleeding. Clotting busting drugs, thrombolytic therapy, and blood thinners such as heparin are prescribed for the treatment. Meningitis. Meningitis is characterized by inflammation of the protective membrane covering up the brain and spinal cord. The meninges inflammation may be the result of infection with viruses, bacteria, or other microorganisms, and less commonly by certain drugs. Meningitis can be life-threatening because of the location of inflammation is very close to the brain and spinal cord. Therefore, the condition is classified as medical emergency. Symptoms. The symptoms usually come on quickly or may include fever and chills, mental status changes, nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, severe headache, stiff neck, agitation, decreased consciousness, poor feeding and irritability in children, rapid hip breathing, and unusual posture, with the head and neck arched backwards. Treatment. Treatment of meningitis depend on the organism causing the infection. Antibiotics and corticosteroids are used as general treatment. Brain tumors. A brain tumor is mass or growth of abnormal cells due to uncontrolled cell division in brain. A brain tumor may be benign or malignant. A tumor can originate in brain, primary brain tumor, or it can be originated in other part of the body and spread to the brain. Symptoms. The signs and symptoms of a brain tumor vary greatly and depend on the brain tumor size, location, and rate of growth. General signs and symptoms caused by brain tumors may include new onset, a change in pattern, or headache. They gradually become more frequent and more severe. Unexplained nausea or vomiting, vision problems such as blurred vision, double vision, or loss of peripheral vision, gradual loss of sensation or movement in an arm or a leg, difficulty with balance, speech difficulties, confusion in everyday matters, personality and behavior changes, and hearing problems. Treatment and drugs. Treatment for a brain tumor depend on the type, size, and location of the tumor as well as overall health preferences. Surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy is the general treatment for tumors. Headache. Headache or cephalgia is pain anywhere in the region of the head or neck. It can be symptom of a number of different conditions of the head and neck. It is one of the most common locations of pain in the body has many causes. The brain tissue itself is not sensitive to pain because it lacks pain receptor. Rather, the pain is caused by disturbance of the pain sensitive structure around the brain. Several areas of the head and neck have these pain sensitive structures, which are the cranium, periosteum of the skull, muscle, nerve, arteries, and veins. Subcutaneous tissues, eyes, ears, sinuses, and mucous membranes. Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, a slowly progressive disease of the brain that is characterized by impairment of memory and eventually by disturbances in reasoning, planning, language, and perception. Signs and symptoms. Most prominent symptom of Alzheimer's disease is dementia, which is characterized by the loss of memory, particularly for recent events, short-term memory. In addition to this, mid-personality changes such as less spontaneity, apathy, absence of emotion, and tendency of withdraw from social interactions may occur early in illness. As the disease progresses, problems in abstract thinking and in other intellectual functions develop. The person may begin to have trouble with figures when working on bills, with understanding what is being read, or with organizing the day's work. Further disturbances in behavior and appearance may also be seen at this point, such as agitation, irritability, quarrelsomeness, and a diminishing ability to dress appropriately. Causes and risk factors. The likelihood of having Alzheimer's disease increases substantially after the age of 70 and may affect around 50% of persons over the age of 85. Nonetheless, Alzheimer's disease is not normal part of aging and is not something that inevitably happens in later life. For example, many people live to over 100 years of age and never develop Alzheimer's disease. Many scientists believe that Alzheimer's disease results from an increase in the production of accumulation of specific protein, beta amyloid protein, in that brain that leads to neurocell death. The onset of Alzheimer's disease is usually gradual and is slowly progressive. Key points. Nervous coordination in higher animal consists of reception of stimulus, processing analysis of information, and response to stimulus. Receptors are classified into different types on the basis of stimuli. Those parts of the body which produce an appropriate response are called effector muscles and glands. Although more than 50% of nervous system consists of neural neuroglial cells, but the neuron is considered as chief structural and functional unit of nervous system. Neurons having only one fiber radiating from cell body is called unipolar neuron, while those having two fibers called bipolar and those having many fibers are called multipolar. The pathway of nerve impulse during reflex action is called reflex arc. Nerve impulse is a wave of electrochemical chain that travels along the length of neuron from one end to the other. Conduction, it uses electricity made with chemical ions and molecules, sodium, potassium, and charge-bearing organic molecules. Nerve impulses are of two types: continuous impulse and saltatory impulse. Synapses is the junction between axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron, where information from one neuron is transmitted or relayed handed over to another neuron. Some neurotransmitters that produce excitation on postsynaptic neuron receptor are called excitatory neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, while other inhibit the photosynaptic action potential are called inhibitory neurotransmitter, glutamate. Human nervous system is primarily divided into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Human brain coordinates the actions so that they happen in the right sequence and at the right time and place. Spinal cord, a central cable of nervous system. The somatic nervous system is the part of peripheral nervous system responsible for carrying sensory and motor information between central nervous system and voluntary parts of the body. Autonomic nervous system consists of sensory neurons and motor neurons that run between central nervous system, especially the hypothalamus and medulla oblongata, and various internal organs such as heart, lungs, viscera, glands, both exocrine and endocrine. Sensory receptor receive stimuli and keep the central nervous system informed of any change in the surrounding and in our own bodies. Heroin is produced from morphine, a naturally occurring substance extracted from the seed of pod of certain varieties of poppy plants. Inhalants are chemical vapors or gases that produce psychoactive mind-alerting effects when abused or misused by concentrating and intentionally inhaling these fumes. Neurological disorders are classified into vascular stroke, infection, meningitis, structural brain tumor, functional headache, degenerative Alzheimer's disease.